Hello, listeners. Welcome to Plano's Political Pitbull podcast. I am Esther.
And I'm Ruth.
And today we are going to continue where we left off in our last episode on the subject of anti-Semitism. We are also going to discuss the Texas special legislative session that the governor has called and started yesterday on July 21st, 2025. But first up, today's show is brought to you by Southwest Pain Management. Southwest Pain Management takes care of most chronic pain without pain pills. Their goal is to get you back to doing the things you love. They are also the world's leading long COVID experts. Dr. Groisman sees people from all over the world to treat their long COVID. Southwest Pain Management is in Plano. Please go to their website, reliefbeginshere.com. That's reliefbeginshere.com to see all that they do. So last week, we went over the Democratic mayor candidate for New York City and how he is a communist and an anti-Semite. And if he wins, Texas and the DFW area will get a flood of people leaving New York City and moving to Texas. We also know that candidate Zohran Mamdani's anti-Semitism is not an isolated case. Anti-Semitism has been on the rise all over the world, and Plano has not been immune to it. We have seen how people show up to city council meetings spewing horrible tropes and falsehoods against Jews and Israel. Now, this has gone into Plano schools. So a journalist, Marian Zivin, I believe it's pronounced Zivin, with the Israeli Times, she posted an article titled, "When Silence Hurts." When silence hurts. Jewish parents in Plano demand action against the rising anti-Semitism in classrooms. Now, we've seen anti-Semitism with the kids before. We heard many cases of children who came to the school that my children had gone to. It was a Jewish day school. And a lot of these kids that came from the Plano schools complained about being picked on because they were Jewish.
Yeah, they'd have their kippas ripped off or their tzitzit. Yeah, I sometimes get tali and tzitzit confused, mixed up. So their tzitzit pulled.
For the people who don't know what a kippah or a tzitzit is, so the kippah is little hats that Jewish men wear. Sometimes women wear them too. And tzitzit is tzitzit, is a sort of it's a shirt that goes under the clothing, but there's little strings that dangle out. It's in our Bible, in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. I believe it's in Leviticus. It is commanded that you wear fringes on the 4 corners of your garment. This is how they fulfill that commandment. Yeah, kids would pull on them. Well, now we're seeing that the anti-Semitism is not just with the children who are doing
bullying,
and doing things like playing monkey in the middle with a yarmulke. It's now the teachers. So Miriam here, she says, Jewish families are grappling with a troubling and unacceptable rise in anti-Semitism. What was once a quiet undercurrent has now become a glaring problem, leaving many parents feeling ignored, dismissed, and deeply betrayed. The most recent incident involved a high school classroom where a teacher presented students with a Jeopardy-style game. And one of the prompts was, group who wants to gain back the country they lost to Israel. The correct answer, who are the Palestinians? Now, this is not factual, not historical at all. So that's the first problem. It also dangerously oversimplifies a huge complex issue and presents it in a way that frames Israel and the Jews as aggressors and occupiers, and we have discussed that this is not the case.
Yeah, go watch the last episode for that.
Yeah, or listen.
Listen, yeah. Sorry, I'm tired.
So, Miriam continues, this is not an isolated case. Jewish parents in Plano have reported a pattern of anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli rhetoric being introduced in the curriculum and classroom discussions, often taught as fact to young impressionable students who lack the context to discern bias. Now, I have to say, before I continue reading what I have, the highlights of this article, I would like to know how this got into the curriculum, because you tell me, Ruth, you are a teacher. I am pretty sure this is nowhere in the state-approved curriculum and what they call the TEKS here.
Not that I know of.
No, not even close. They are going rogue in Plano. I don't know if it's the Board of Ed that's going rogue or it's the teachers, but they're doing something here that is not part of the law. The article continues. Parents have attempted to raise their concerns through the appropriate channels, contacting school administrators, school board members, and even Plano City Council representatives. So far, they have received silence. In defense of Plano City Council, and Lord knows they need it in this area, Plano City Council cannot do anything. They have zero control over the school district. That's why it's called Plano Independent Schools. Totally separate. Now, in some cities, that is not the case. The cities do have power over the schools. In Texas, this is not the case. They are totally separate. So, Plano City Council members can talk to the Board of Trustees.
So this is high schoolers or also middle schoolers?
She doesn't say. It sounds like it's going through all of the schools. Now, this Jeopardy question here, I believe it sounds like it's either from middle school or high school.
It says these are high schoolers.
Yes. This particular Jeopardy question was high school. But she goes and she says young. So
the reason I'm asking is because I'm thinking about where they could shove it in. And in high school, you're learning about world history, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I could see them shoving it in when they're learning about the Middle East or something.
Okay. Interesting. Now,
I don't really know high school TEKS because I don't really teach high school.
But
so
when you were in middle school, you had some world history as well. I mean, granted, you were in private, but the school pretty much followed the structure of, this year you're going to learn U.S. history, this year you're going to learn world history, this year you're going to learn. You don't remember?
Maybe in 7th grade, but I don't really remember much from that year.
Okay. Because I remember you learning about...
I remember learning about World War II a lot.
Well, yes, there was an extra focus on World War II in your schools, obviously. They also, instead of doing a second year of Texas history, sorry, Texas, they did Israeli history or the history of Israel in 8th grade. And then they went on their 8th grade trip. So, slight deviation there. Miriam goes on. There is a hyper focus in many classrooms on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, often at the expense of neutrality and academic integrity. Jewish families are not asking for propaganda in the other direction. They are simply asking for neutrality, balance, and a willingness from educators and officials to acknowledge and correct anti-Semitism when it surfaces. She goes on, it is especially disheartening for families who believe that in a conservative, pro-Israel state like Texas, they would be safe from such bias. One Jewish family recently pulled their child from the district altogether. Others are openly considering leaving Plano or even the country for places where they feel their children won't be targeted or isolated by their identity.
The bias thing makes me laugh because, yeah, there's always bias no matter what the topic is. It's been a problem for eons.
Yeah.
No one's safe from bias.
No, they're not. I'm not sure how you would teach this other than to teach it accurately. But the problem is that if you teach it accurately, then Muslim or Palestinians or Muslims are going to say that the school is biased against them. Because we've gone over the history. What the Palestinians are saying is not true.
Well, that's why you largely had a gap in Middle Eastern history, because it's a touchy subject.
Yeah, I can say that I never even...
You would rather not touch.
So when I was in high school, we never dealt with it at all. We didn't even...
I wonder why.
Touch it. And
also, I feel like nobody knows.
I went to a school that was predominantly Jewish. It was a public school. We just lived in a very Jewish neighborhood. And, for example, if we didn't have the high holidays off, like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the school would have been mostly empty. So they just decided, you know what, we're just going to give them off on those 3 days because nobody's here anyway. So we went over World War II. We went over the Holocaust. When it came to Israel and Palestine, we really didn't. When I got into high school, we mostly got to do electives, and I took Russian history, believe it or not.
I only learned about it when we did the in 8th grade when we did the history of Israel, and then later in high school when we did Jewish history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
it's not part of the secular curriculum.
And I don't think it should be.
It's too complicated.
First of all, I don't even know where you'd squeeze it in. There is so much that these kids have to learn now. In American history, we go all the way back to the Native Americans before the conquistadors.
In world history, we went all the way back to like the cavemen, and we didn't even finish. We didn't even get to World War II or World War I.
Yeah, it too much crammed in to one class. You just can't do it all.
Our teacher literally had us go through the book, pick a section. We had to pick a section from the rest of the other half of the book.
Mm-hmm.
and then do a presentation on that. So it was basically independent study at that point.
Wow.
And it was only one section too. I don't remember anything from that part.
I'm not surprised.
The only thing I remember from that class was the Renaissance, because we spent so long on that.
The Renaissance is a big thing. I took a class in college on it. Learned a lot about the Renaissance artists.
Oh, and also the Magna Carta. We spent a lot of time during the Middle Ages.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a big chunk of history. The article continues. Plano's Jewish community is not asking for special treatment. They are demanding equal protection, respect, and a classroom environment where their children can learn without fear or shame. If Texas prides itself on being a place where values matter, then those values must include standing up for Jewish students, not only with words, but with meaningful action. And that concludes the article. You know, there's a saying that I think of because she says the elected officials and the administrators are silent. So, not to speak is to speak. If you don't say anything, you are condoning this behavior.
Well, were they stopping the children from bullying the Jews before? Because, I mean, that was the whole reason why you had a bunch of people coming to Jewish schools in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, that was not why we sent you guys, my kids, to Jewish school. We sent,
yeah, it was. You didn't like
that was
public schools.
But bullying was not the reason. I wanted you guys to have a Jewish education. I don't particularly trust the public schools. I wanted a more individualized education for you guys, smaller classrooms, which you did get. And there were smaller classrooms. And you got a Jewish education as well as a secular education.
And a biased education. You couldn't escape that. There was only ever one teacher that wasn't biased to one side.
Well, there's always going to be bias.
He wasn't biased to either side because he presented two sources from either side and talked about the events in a non-biased manner that was objective.
Was this the history teacher in high school?
This was the history teacher I liked in high school, yes. The only history teacher I ever liked.
I liked him too. I was the parent who was correcting the textbooks.
She was the parent that every teacher hated.
Because I would find mistakes and I'd be like, no, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And they'd come to me and say, there's nothing I can do. It's like, yes, you can. You can correct the book. I think one teacher said, call the publisher. And it was something so simple as, the book said that we were a democracy. And I said,
drives her crazy.
No, we're not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. And I said, I forget what grade you were in, but I said to the teacher, we're not, we're a constitutional republic. Told her the story about how Benjamin Franklin, when he came out of the Constitutional Convention, was asked by a woman, Dr. Franklin, what kind of government have you given us? And he famously says, a republic, if you can keep it. Nowhere in our Constitution is the word democracy even used. So that is one of my biggest pet peeves when people say, we're a democracy, save our democracy. No, we're not a democracy. We are not majority rule. Yes, we vote, but we vote for our representatives. That's where it stops.
And then instead of admitting that she made a mistake, yes, the book is wrong, and then, teaching it the next day correctly, she didn't do that.
No, she said, well, notify the publisher.
Okay, you're still teaching it wrong.
So you can't get away from everything that you don't like about the school system, even if you go to a private school.
Because, teachers are people.
Yeah. But I will say, if you are a Jewish family out there and you don't like what you're seeing and you feel that your children are being discriminated against, pull them out. I know it's hard, but Jewish schools, we do have a few of them here. Levine Academy is one, Akiba is another one for the middle and elementary school. You have we have a high school, Yavna here in Dallas. You won't have a problem with anti-Semitism. If you're conservative politically, you might have a problem. But if you're not, if that's not something that you care about, then I'd say at least they're safe there. That's a big concern. If you're somebody who can homeschool, I'd say homeschool. If you don't want to do either of those things, or if you don't think you have the money, a lot of schools, they do have scholarships, or what they call reduced tuition. They base tuition on income. So a family can still go to the school and reap that reward and don't have to pay so much money for it. Now, it's still going to be money, so it's still going to be out of your pocket, because the school choice bill we got, unless your child is disabled or you are or you're low income, odds are you're not going to get on that list for the grant that they're giving out. I think it's $10,000 per student. If you want an even more individualized education, I recommend Bridge Builder Academy. They have a great curriculum. They are one-on-one, one student, one child. Excellent school. Now, they're secular, but you won't have a problem with anti-Semitism there. They are a lovely school. This is very disheartening for me as a person who picked Plano to live. When we came down here, we didn't think that we would have to deal with this. We were more concerned about anti-Semitism, but in the regards of like the KKK and being discriminated against because we weren't Christian. But my mind was put at ease because this is a very diverse area. We have a lot of Jews here. So I didn't think it was going to be an issue.
Yeah, you didn't think it was going to be an issue because anti-Semitism wasn't as prevalent and honestly widely accepted as it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Things have changed very much.
Maybe it's because I was in a bit of a bubble, but anti-Semitism never even crossed my mind. It was never a thing in my life.
You didn't have to deal with it because where you went to school, you went to school with a Jewish school, and then you went to school with a lovely little secular school that was fabulous, and for the rest of your high school. So it wasn't. We were surrounded by some wonderful people, and it's sad to see how what we thought was really behind us has now come back. I guess it was never really behind us. It was always out there. It just wasn't. It was behind the scenes. It was in the shadows. But now people feel emboldened and they're not afraid. Let's see what happens. Again, if you are a Jewish family that has kids in the district, I strongly suggest you get out of the district right now. Maybe this will change. On to a more happier topic. We're going to move to the Texas special legislative session that the governor has called. Now, in Texas, the governor can call the legislature back into session with what he calls a special session. And he can do this to get bills passed that he wants to see on issues that he felt weren't covered in the regular session. And the governor has a long list of things for our reps to do. As of today, there were 189 bills filed in the State House and 31 bills filed in the Senate. Now you might be wondering, why only 31? Well, that's about how many senators we have. And they can only file bills, they're only supposed to file bills and pass bills on the subjects the governor wants. So they can't go off the rails and just file something that they want. That's what they're supposed to do anyway. So I have the list of the items for our special session. So item 1, a flood warning system. Legislation to improve early warning systems and other preparedness infrastructure in flood-prone areas throughout Texas. Obviously, this is in response to what happened in the Hill Country and the massive flood. Horrible flood that happened. You know, I think part of the problem with that area, first of all, it is called Flood Alley. Problem number 1. But problem number 2, it happened at night. Your televisions are off. If you're like me, you turn your cell phone off. So the only way you find out the water's rising is when you actually see it yourself. And if you're asleep, it's probably going to be too late. Flood emergency communications. It's an item 2. Legislation to strengthen emergency communications and other response infrastructure in flood-prone areas throughout Texas. Relief funding for Hill Country flooding. That's a no-brainer. I don't think these first 3 things are going to be too contentious. National disaster preparedness and recovery. So I think those 4 things are going to be pretty easy to do. Of course, we are talking about politicians. The next few are going to be a little contentious. Eliminate the STAR test. Legislation to eliminate the STAR test and replace it with effective tools to assess student progress and ensure school districts' accountability. Cut property taxes. Now, they cut property taxes, or they passed legislation to cut property taxes already. So he wants more. And this I find really interesting. So it says legislation reducing the property tax burden on Texans and legislation imposing spending limits on entities authorized to impose property taxes. I foresee loads of elected officials from city council to school board to commissioners' courts running down to Austin because that is going to trigger mass hysteria. If the Texas legislature says you can't spend all the money you want to spend.
Okay.
Think about it. I mean, well, what happens every budget year? Budget time is coming up the end of the month in July. We always get the proposed budget, and I'm putting proposed in quotes here, in air quotes, budget from the city manager. And do you think that they say, well, how much money are we going to get? Or how much money could we get and how much, then therefore how much do we have to spend? No, they say how much do we want to spend and then figure out how they're going to tax that to get it. That's why it was so hard for many years to get the no new revenue rate, so that people's bills, property tax bills, wouldn't go up every year. So this is going to be fun to watch. We have protect children from THC. I think that's a no-brainer. They want legislation to make it a crime to provide hemp-derived products to children under 21 years of age. And then regulate hemp-derived products. So he wants the regulation. Legislation to comprehensively regulate hemp-derived products, including limiting potency, restricting synthetically modified compounds, and establishing enforcement mechanisms, all without banning a lawful agricultural commodity. Protect the unborn children. Further legislation protecting unborn children and their mothers from the harm of abortion. I don't quite understand that one. I think we have pretty strict here in Texas. So I don't know how more strict we...
They want it even stricter. Yeah. They want no one to be able to get an abortion ever. I don't know how they can make it stricter, but they want to make it stricter.
People are leaving Texas to get abortions. I don't know.
Maybe they want it to be
stricter.
From conception, like all-out ban.
It is.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I'm really tired.
Wake up, girl. I believe it's from conception. Of course, I don't know how you would know. You don't really know when, unless you're keeping track of these things, you can't really know for sure when egg meets sperm. So,
the last thing I remember is the 2-week thing. The heartbeat bill.
Oh, no, that's, you can hear a heartbeat at 6 weeks. Well, so what they did was...
Oh, right, 6 weeks.
Yeah, so they had...
I gotta wake up.
They passed that. But then Roe v. Wade was overturned. Everything reverted back to the states. So what Texas did in anticipation of that is they had a trigger law that says when and if Roe v. Wade was ever overturned, they would basically, all abortions would be banned. I don't know how more strict you can get. This is my favorite one. Ban taxpayer-funded lobbying. Please, can we please do this? Legislation prohibiting taxpayer-funded lobbying, including the use of tax dollars to hire lobbyists.
I just thought of something.
Okay, hold on, let me finish. Payment of tax dollars to associations that lobby the Texas legislature. Go ahead.
Maybe they want to prevent people from traveling outside the state to get an abortion.
So that would be unconstitutional because you can't prohibit people from leaving the state.
It doesn't mean they can't try to get around it.
To do something that's legal in another state. That would be like stopping somebody from going to California and smoking weed because weed is illegal in California. You can't do that either.
Again, doesn't mean they're not going to try and get around it.
Yeah.
I mean, you had cities doing that.
Yes. Well, they didn't want to... What that was is they didn't want taxpayer dollars funding it. Funding the travel, because groups were trying to give people who are of lower means, couldn't afford to, let's say, go to New Mexico or California or wherever they were going to go. They couldn't afford it, so they were giving money. Now, that's fine. That's legal if it's not taxpayer money. If it's taxpayer money, then you've got an issue. So they don't want the taxpayers funding. And frankly, I understand that. If it's something that you feel in your heart of hearts is so abhorrent to you and goes against your core beliefs, I don't blame you if you don't want to fund it. I wouldn't want to fund something that went against my core beliefs. So
that's not what I'm talking about, but okay.
Yeah, I understand. I know what you mean, but maybe we'll see. I haven't looked at some of the bills that have been filed. I will, and we'll see what's out there. So yeah, I want to see about this taxpayer-funded lobbying. It really, really annoys me. And here we have something that the taxpayers don't want to fund being funded. When you have a city council going down to Austin, hiring these lobbyists because the members don't want to go down there themselves, to fund lobbyists to basically lobby the legislature not to cut property taxes or not to do something that is going to be bad for the city but good for the taxpayers. So they have been trying to pass this one for so long. Hopefully they'll get it done this session. Protect human trafficking victims. That should be an easy one. Police personal records. Legislation protecting law enforcement officers from public disclosure of unsubstantiated complaints in personal files. Protecting women's spaces. Legislation protecting women's privacy in sex-separated spaces. I thought we got that done too. Guess not. Attorney General election powers. Legislation proposing a constitutional amendment allowing the Attorney General to prosecute state election crimes. So there was a slight issue with the Supreme Court in Texas. They had said that the Attorney General doesn't have the power to prosecute election fraud crimes. They have to be prosecuted in the district that the crime occurs. The only problem with that is you have DAs in some districts that won't prosecute and DAs in other districts that will. So it's not exactly a fair system. So where are you going to do most of the election fraud? In the area where you have a DA that's not going to prosecute that. Redistricting. So we may be getting some new lines drawn.
Yay.
Next one, title theft and deed fraud. Legislation similar to Senate Bill number 648 from the 89th legislative session that provides strengthened protections against title theft and deed fraud. This is a big problem that's been going on. People even have to get home title protection. So hopefully they'll be able to do something. And water project incentives. So more water projects. And state judicial department. So this is legislation relating to the operation and administration of the judicial department of the state of Texas, of the state government. That's pretty broad. Let's see. I did glance at a couple of the bills that were filed, and a lot of them were creating new courts. So we'll see what happens with that. But session started yesterday. They're off and running. We'll keep you posted and we'll update you on how it's going. I have some good news. Really good news. Gemma was adopted. Yay! So we have a new, very important dog. And since Gemma was a girl, we have a boy for you today. Our very important dog is Zeus. Zeus is a friendly boy who is about 5 years of age. He is a smart dog who will make a great companion for you. He is a playful dog who was never claimed by his owner. One of his eyes has a genetic defect, but it sure doesn't slow him down. He is an active and sweet boy who really wants a new home. He is so affectionate and just a love bug. So if you are interested in seeing more about Zeus, please go to our website, planospoliticalpitbull.com, and click on the link, Pitbulls Up for Adoption. You will see an adorable picture of Zeus there, and you just click on the box underneath Zeus. That is all the time we have for today. Please like, share, and subscribe. This is Esther.
And this is Ruth.
For Plano's Political Pitbull, signing off.